Welcome to Yesterday's World Channel. Today, we take you on a journey back in time to ancient Egypt, exploring the remarkable life of one of history's most iconic women, Cleopatra. From her legendary beauty to her political savvy, Cleopatra's story is one of power, intrigue, and passion. Join us as we unveil the extraordinary life of the last queen of Egypt. Since there are no contemporary accounts of Cleopatra's life, it is difficult to cite her biography with much certainty. Much of what is known about his life is drawn from the works of Greco-Roman scholars, especially Plutarch. Born in 70 or 69 BC, Cleopatra was the daughter of Ptolemy XII, a descendant of Ptolemy I, one of Alexander the Great's generals and the founder of the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt. His mother was believed to be Cleopatra V. Tryphena, the king's wife, and possibly his half-sister. In 51 BC, with the natural death of Ults, the throne of Egypt passed to the 18-year-old Cleopatra and her 10-year-old brother, Ptolemy XIII. In the days between Cleopatra's death and Octavian's formal accession to Egypt, her 16-year-old son Caesar was officially the sole ruler. However, he was unable to seize power and was arrested and executed shortly after his mother's suicide. Immediately after her siblings ascended to the throne, Ptolemy's advisors took action against Cleopatra and she was forced to flee from Egypt to Syria in 49 BC. He raised an army of mercenaries and the following year returned to Egypt's eastern border to face his brother's forces, in a civil war at Pelusium. Meanwhile, after ordering the assassination of the Roman general Pompey, Ptolemy XIII welcomed the arrival of Pompey's rival, Julius Caesar, in Alexandria. To help her position, Cleopatra supported the would-be Caesar and, according to visions, smuggled herself into the royal palace and begged Caesar to defend her. Caesar also needed money to return to power in Rome. He needed Egypt to repay the debts owed by Alts. After 4 months of fighting between the outnumbered forces of Caesar and those of Ptolemy XIII, Roman reinforcements arrived. Ptolemy was forced to flee Alexandria and was believed to have drowned in the Nile. Arriving in Alexandria as an unpopular conqueror, Caesar returned the throne to the equally unpopular Cleopatra and her younger brother Ptolemy XIV, then XIII. Caesar stayed with Cleopatra for some time in Egypt and gave birth to a son named Ptolemy Caesar around 47 BC. He was considered Caesar's son, and the Egyptian people knew him as Caesar or Little Caesar. In 46 to 45 BC, Cleopatra traveled to Rome with Ptolemy XIV and Caesar to meet Caesar, who had returned earlier. After Caesar was killed in March 44 BC, Cleopatra returned to Egypt. Ptolemy XIV was killed shortly afterward, probably by Cleopatra's agents, and 3-year-old Caesar was elected regent with his mother as Ptolemy XV. At this stage, Cleopatra identified herself with a goddess like Isis, sister-wife of Osiris, and mother of Horus. In the ancient Egyptian tradition, it was popular to connect the monarchy with divinity to strengthen the position of the kings and queens. Cleopatra III also claimed to be Isis, fertility goddess, and Cleopatra VII was referred to as the new Isis. According to Plutarch, he spoke dozens of languages and was famous for his incomparable charm. With her infant son as regent, Cleopatra's power in Egypt was more secure than ever. However, the unexpected flooding of the Nile led to reduced agricultural production, inflation, and starvation. Meanwhile, the conflict between the second trio of Caesar's allies, Mark Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus, and his assassins, Brutus and Cassius, was going on in Rome. Both sides appealed to Egypt for support, and after a pause, Cleopatra sent 4 Roman legions stationed in Egypt Caesar to support the triumvirate. In 42 BC, Mark Antony and Octavian divided power in Rome after Brutus and Cassius' forces were defeated at the Battle of Philippi. Mark Antony later summoned Cleopatra to the Sicilian city of Tarsus, modern-day southern Turkey, to explain the role she had played in the complex aftermath of Caesar's assassination. According to a story recorded by Plutarch and later dramatized by William Shakespeare, Cleopatra sailed to Tarsus in a luxurious ship while dressed as the goddess Isis. Antony, who associated himself with the Greek god Dionysus, was seduced by his charms. He agreed to protect Egypt and Cleopatra's crown, and promised to help oust her younger sister and then rival Arsene, who was in exile. Cleopatra returned to Egypt, and shortly thereafter Antony left his third wife, Fulvia, and their children in Rome. Antony spent the winter of 40 to 41 BC in Alexandria, during which time he and Cleopatra formed a drinking society called the Inimitable Livers. In 40 BC, after Antony returned to Rome, Cleopatra gave birth to her twins, Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene. After Fulvia fell ill and died, Antony was forced to prove his loyalty to Octavian by diplomatically marrying Octavian's half-sister Octavia. Egypt became more prosperous under the rule of Cleopatra in 37 BC. Antony met with Cleopatra again to raise funds for his long campaign against the Parthian kingdom. In return, he agreed to return much of Egypt's eastern empire, including Cyprus, Crete, Cyrenaica, Libya, Jericho, and large parts of Syria and Lebanon. They fell in love again, and Cleopatra gave birth to another son, Ptolemy Philadelphus, in 36 BC. After a humiliating defeat in Parthia, Antony publicly rejected his wife Octavia's attempts to rejoin him and instead returned to Egypt and Cleopatra. In a public celebration in 34 known as the Donation of Alexandria, Antony declared Caesar Caesar's son and legitimate heir, as opposed to his adopted son, Octavian, and each of his children with Cleopatra was granted land. This caused a propaganda war between him and Octavian, who was very angry. Octavian claimed Antony was completely under Cleopatra's control and would abandon Rome and found a new capital in Egypt. In late 32 BC, the Roman Senate stripped Antony of all titles and Octavian declared war on Cleopatra. On September 2, 31 BC, Octavian's forces defeated those of Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium. Cleopatra's ships left the battle and fled to Egypt, and Antony soon managed to break away and follow her with several ships. With Octavian's forces attacking Alexandria, Antony heard a rumor that Cleopatra had committed suicide. He fell on his sword and died just as news arrived that the rumor was false. On August 12, 30 BC, after burying Antony and meeting the victorious Octavian, Cleopatra locked herself in her chamber with her two female attendants. By what means he committed suicide is unclear, but Plutarch and other writers have theorized that he used a poisonous snake called a snake, a symbol of divine kingship, to commit suicide at the age of 39. Cleopatra's body was buried with Antony's as she had wished, and she left Octavian, the next Emperor Augustus I, celebrating the conquest of Egypt and establishing their power in Rome forever. And that concludes our exploration of Cleopatra's autobiography. From her rise to power as the Queen of Egypt to her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, Cleopatra's life is a testament to her intellect, charm, and unwavering determination. Through her legacy, she continues to fascinate and inspire people around the world. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories of influential figures.